I was having a conversation with a couple friends about fuel economy. All three of us have pickup trucks, and we were comparing our mileage. Now, it really wasn't an apples-to-apples comparison because they have older pickup trucks with gasoline engines, and I have a newer pickup truck with a diesel engine. So I got far superior mileage than they did. However, at the end of the conversation, one of my friends brought up the fact that he'd like to know how much of a savings do I really get getting that better mileage with the higher cost of diesel fuel and the higher cost of maintenance on a diesel truck. He didn't even bring up the fact that the option for getting a diesel engine on my truck costs extra money too. So there's an additional cost over the lifetime of the truck. Now, if I was using this truck for work, it was a business vehicle, I would want to do an analysis and see what sort of return on investment I got on getting a diesel engine pickup truck versus a gas engine truck, especially if I plan to stay in business for a while and I want to make good decisions for the future. However, this is a personal vehicle, and although I think his question was legitimate and he meant well by it, I really don't think that trying to work out some sort of spreadsheet with all these costs and figures is really an accurate analysis on whether or not it's a good value. Because for me, the added cost of the truck, purchasing it, and the added expense of the maintenance or the fuel is worth it for reasons that really aren't measurable. And I think it really comes down to what kind of people are we, who we are, and what our lifestyle entails, and what are our backgrounds, what are our goals, what are our social economical status, different things like that. The things that make us individuals are really things that kind of can skew data or really make something that is measurable inaccurate when you're looking at somebody's, I guess, their wants, really. Because, for example, there are some people out there that don't ever want to own a pickup truck of any sort. I used to be that sort of person. I used to be a car guy, and I like low to the ground and fast and that sort of thing. And I went away from that. I decided that I wanted to get a pickup truck based on some things that, some experiences I started having. And after I got my first truck, I was hooked. I really was. And I'm on my third new truck. So I probably will never be a car guy again. Before I got this truck, I considered getting a car or a crossover because of the fuel economy, maybe getting something with all-wheel drive. But my wife said, no, you're a truck guy and you'll always be a truck guy. And she's right. She really is. So right there, how do you measure that, right? Having been both kinds of people, I can see where you're not going to get an accurate measure of that. You know, you're not going to put a price tag on the added expense of having a truck if you're a truck person. The other thing is that I really like diesels, and I know for some people, they just don't like them. They think of these loud, smelly, engines that diesel technology has gone away from that. And although you can still get vehicles with those older engines and whatnot, and they still run pretty good, these newer diesels are quieter, they don't have the smell, and they're just a little bit more user-friendly, but they are more expensive. And that's another thing, too, is for some people, the added maintenance of the extra filters or the extra cost, oil changes on my truck cost me, when I do them, about $80, $85, right? Some people are like, no, I'm not going to pay that much. Or just the higher fuel prices. Right now, it's $6 a gallon, right? I paid $118 to fill up the truck last night. But here's the thing. I get 600 miles out of a tank of fuel. So even though I don't like paying $118, I'm still getting a lot of distance out of that. And when fuel prices went up, I didn't like it, but it didn't affect me as much, especially when I'm doing highway driving. It didn't affect me as much as maybe somebody with a 25-year-old truck that gets 10 miles to the gallon or less. Even if you're paying 75 or 85 cents less a gallon, when you're getting in the single digits or teens per gallon, and I'm getting 36 miles per gallon, for 85 cents more a gallon. I mean, do you see what I mean? But when you start factoring over all those other costs over time, I can see where somebody would be like, no, it's just not for me. Or the fact that not every gas station do you pull up to has a diesel pump. Or if they do, they're the two on the outboard, and there's always some douchebag there with a little car that takes gas when they could have been at another pump taking a spot, and you've got to wait your turn. Or other things like that. Sometimes some places you go to might not carry the oil or filter you need in order to do your oil change or something like that. So there are other hindrances that come with owning a diesel truck. You know, I have to put diesel exhaust fluid in my vehicle. It runs about 20 bucks a gallon, and not every place sells it. If I drive in the city, I get a lot more mileage, I guess you could say, out of that gallon of diesel exhaust fluid than I do on the highway. So there's lots of different things to take into consideration. But for me, I fell in love with diesels years ago. I like diesels. I miss my 1-ton truck sometimes because that thing could just crash through anything and pull anything, and just even when something was broke on it, it would just muscle its way through anything. And you know, that truck got to the point where the expense to repair it was getting to be too much. I mean, I had 3 fuel pumps on there, and they were all about $2,500 to $3,000 a pump, right? I mean, there were other things but that truck had all the power and gave no fucks, seriously. And how do you measure that when you're trying to do a comparison? So I think for any of us, whether it be our vehicles or what kind of neighborhood we live in, or whether we rent or buy, whether we live in a house or whether we live in a trailer, whether we live in the country, whether we live in the city, whether we got a college degree or whether we went to trade school or whether we started our own business, or just so many other choices that we have to make in life. We can sit there and try to figure out, nickel and dime it, to figure out if we made a good economic choice or if we made a good decision 20 years ago that's benefiting us now. But we can't always predict the future, and there's really no way to factor in that individuality of the choice. I think the most important thing about the choices we make in life, whether it be to buy new or used, or whether it's 9mm or 45 or chocolate, strawberry, or vanilla, or whatever your choice is that you make a choice, you make an informed choice, you adjust your choices as you get older and your experience improves or your lifestyle changes, and you stand behind your choices, you stand behind your decisions. You admit when you're wrong, you learn from your mistakes, you try to always learn something even when you fail. You don't let failure hold you back. You might realize that there's no value in this and that maybe it's a better idea to move on to something else. That's especially good advice in a relationship. But that you don't ever burden somebody else with your choices. When you fail, it's up to you to dig yourself out of that hole. It's up to you to learn from your failures, and it's up to you to move on and make better choices in your life. And if somebody else insists that their lifestyle, their choices are better than yours because they're always right and you're always wrong, or they're always right and everybody else is always wrong, be careful of that sort of thing. There are lots of people out there with opinions, and they think their opinions are facts. And yes, you can have measurables that you can put into a chart or graph or spreadsheet or something to quantify, to justify something. But there are other things that just aren't measurable, and it's personal choice, it's personal preference, and it's our individuality. And that is something that you're just not going to be able to measure like you can some other statistical data. So make your choice, stand by it, learn from it, and don't be afraid of change or growth, especially when it's something that happens with you over time as an individual. Thanks for listening.